Okay, so if you remember last time where we ended off, I had tested the machine, but it was leaking really, really bad. The front boot was leaking everywhere. It was leaking from the pump. So now what we have to do is I have to take the barrel apart again, which sucks because I want to find the leak. So I'm looking at this barrel and I follow it all the way to the bottom, and look what we found. A little rust hole. I did not see that last time, so we're going to fix it with some JB Quick. And I know I'm going to get a million people saying, why didn't you weld it? You should have welded it. That's not a legitimate fix. Well, here's the thing about it, is that you could have tried welding that, but you might have ended up making the hole bigger with the weld, and that would be even a bigger problem to deal with. You might not even be able to fix that. So I JB'd it, and then I put a lot of silicone around it, and then I put the front half back on and hose clamped it and everything. So now we're taking apart the front pump. So right now I'm replacing that spring that I'm taking out right now because it broke. That's the second one I've broke, and here's the new one that we're going to be putting back on it for the third time. So I got this spring from Ace Hardware. It's nothing special, and we're going to cut the ends off like you see me doing right there. And when you cut the ends off, that makes it to where you can slide it on each side of the shaft. And once we get the spring cut, we're going to go ahead and put it on the impeller shaft and stick it through there. And then we're going to put it on the rotator shaft right there. See, that's the part that rotates, that goes against the electric motor. And that black piece I'm putting on is the blade that pushes the water out when the motor starts turning and turns the spring. It turns that black thing, it pushes the water out. So put the cover back on, and we're going to go ahead and continue reassembling the machine. And that black thing that you see there, it's kind of like a spring. It acts like suspension for the machine. I'll show you exactly what I mean right here. It's kind of like a leaf spring on a vehicle, but when the machine is on its spin cycle and it's spinning real quick and it has weight in there, the suspension system helps kind of keep it stable. Now I get to put the front face of the machine back on. It makes the machine look a million times better, even though it's not painted yet. And here we're putting the collar over the ridge of the outside face. I pull the collar out and I lip it over. There's a lip on the outside face of the machine, and there's a lip on the collar. We put it in there, and that is what helps seal it so that water doesn't splash outside of the machine when you got it running and it's in full effect. So now I'm going over to the cycle selector, select hot, medium hot, or warm cycle, and I pulled the knob, but there was no water coming out. It was just tumbling, and after further inspection, I figured out that I didn't have the hose on. So now we're gonna try it again. We're gonna pull the knob, we're gonna see what happens. So we got water going on in there, it's tumbling, it's doing what it should, and the front face is not leaking. The barrel looks like it's not leaking either. That's bone dry, that's what we wanna see. Now the front pump does have a small drip. You can see up here at the front face has got kind of a drip, but that gasket I haven't done anything with, so that would make sense that it's kind of dripping. But what makes even more sense than that is smashing that like button to help me in the YouTube algorithm. And if you're enjoying this content, don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe for more stuff like this, more restoration content, more 50 stuff. It would mean the world to me, and it's free to you, and it helps me out a bunch. So see, you got these two springs that have been broke, and this is another new one. It keeps snapping these springs. So to fix that, I'm going to put a rod through the middle of it, so even if it tries to twist real hard, that it can't bend it and it can't distort the spring. That rod's going to stop that from happening. I don't know why it's doing that. I have no idea. It's not even going up against, it's not even turning very hard. I don't know why it's bending these springs. So that rod situation ought to help fix it. So now that I'm putting all of this back together, I want to start the machine again, and I want to see if that spring distorts itself from turning too hard. It should not. So we'll start the machine again. We'll let it fill up with some water and do its thing. And that thing, it should really not do that. That's been like a problem point, is snapping these springs. Okay, so now it's engaged. You can see that wheel is turning pretty fast, and the spring is solid as a rock, not going anywhere. So now what I want to do, now that we got that fixed, I want to fix the leak on that front pump. So what I'm going to do here is this green thing that you see me using, that is abrasive enough to clean that surface because it's really bumpy, and because it's bumpy from all of the corrosion and the bad water and stuff, the bumpiness could create tiny gaps that water gets through. So that machine right there smooths it out, and it doesn't take any material off like metal or anything. It just smooths it out. And now I'm cutting a new gasket out of cork. I took the old gasket and I just traced it with a pen, and I cut it with a razor blade and put the front pump back on, and now we don't have a leak out of the front pump. It's totally fixed. It's not leaking anymore. It's good to go as far as that goes, and we got the rod fixed on the front pump, and there's no leaking still out of the big barrel. So we're getting better and better all the time. So I'm running it through another cycle again because I want to make sure that it's not leaking. I want to watch it for a good long time to make sure nothing's happening. But I did find another leak on the pump, not the gasket that I cut out and replaced, but the shaft seal. So the shaft that goes up through that front pump that holds the impeller wheel, it was leaking, and here it is right here. You can see me taking it out. That is actually rubber. What I just pulled out there, that was rubber, and it was leaking because it's so hard that it cannot seal any longer. So after some research and getting some part numbers, I was able to get a seal at AutoZone for like $7 or whatever. So here's that shaft I was talking about, and this little seal will go over that and seal water from going past it. Now that's a seal for a car, it's like an oil seal, but actually it is the perfect diameter for what we're doing. So I got my seal tool and a hammer. We'll just lightly tap it in there. We don't need a bunch of force or anything like that. And then we're going to seal the outside rim of the seal with silicone so that no water gets around the outside of it. And then the inside is all rubber, and the shaft will be going through that, so we won't have an issue there. And then I'm going to put the washer back on, the original washer that was on it. And it had like 2 prongs that were on the ends that need to be pounded in. So here we go. We're putting it back together now. That rubber lip seal is going around there, and I'm hoping that it seals. I'm very confident that it will. It seems like a very good fix. I'm pretty confident about that. Then we'll go ahead and put the impeller wheel back on, that little rubber wheel that pushes the water out. Go ahead and tighten it up with a 1/2-inch wrench there. We'll put the front pump cover back on for like the millionth time, and hopefully we don't have any leaks. So we got the cycle going once again. We got it filled with water, and here we are underneath looking for leaks. That cork seal is doing just fine, and that seal right here where that spring goes in, that's where it was leaking the water. We ain't got no water leaking out. So now, finally, we can do our first full load of actual laundry with the 1953 Westinghouse automatic washing machine. So right now I'm gonna do about a week's worth of clothes, my dad's clothes. That's kind of like my metric, so to speak. A week's worth of normal use clothes is what I would say is a decent for a washer, because I noticed that the barrel of this washer is smaller than most other washers I see, like most other household washers. The barrel is a little bit smaller. I definitely noticed that, so I was kind of scared about the capacity issue, because I don't want it to be impractical or, you know, have to do like 2 or 3 loads or whatever. So this is about a week's worth of clothes, and I'm hoping that it does just fine, because that would mean that it's usable for everyday use. You know, I mean, the whole idea behind doing this is making it to where it would be a good daily driver. You know, I don't want it to be just a museum piece where I just look at it and be like, wow, it's cool that it does work, but we don't use it. I actually want to use it. That's the whole purpose of all this. So now I'm going to put some detergent in. I'm going to go ahead and shut the door. We'll select our little cycle, and it doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. It's just hooked up to a garden hose anyway, but it's a nice thought. We'll go ahead and start it and see what happens.
Detergent's dripping.
Huh? Oh. We got the suds going, it's tumbling, everything is looking so good so far. I mean, this is pretty good. And now it's going to drain out the water so it can go through its spin cycle, and you'll visibly see this click. Watch. Boom. That engages the gear that lets it go fast so it can do its spin cycle. At first I was worried that it wouldn't tumble fast enough to actually dry the clothes enough, but I think it will. I love watching this timer. Boom. How it does that every so often. It goes off, and it should be slowing down. And we'll see what happens with the clothes. I think they come out pretty clean, I hope. So we had maybe 3 or 4 pairs of jeans and a bunch of shirts and a rag. That's pretty heavy clothes. It's a lot of clothes, and it took it like a champ. It did absolutely great. The clothes are dry enough. They don't seem sopping wet. They'll go right into a dryer. So I'm super happy. Make sure you stick around. If you like this, make sure to subscribe for more content, and make sure to follow my TikTok.